Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you here. Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me. I really enjoyed the previous AI session that was on a few minutes ago. I don't know if you all heard it, but it was thought-provoking, and I haven't come here to be provocative. I've come here just to share some points of view, and perhaps to help people think about the sorts of things that AI can do in their lives and in publishing in particular. So I have about 20 slides. They cover some small ideas, maybe some bigger ideas, and I'll take you through those and look forward to your interaction with them. Maybe just before I start on the formal slides, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself because people are sometimes curious. I'm half Irish and half Egyptian, so my name is already often misleading for people. They don't know where I'm from, but that's what I am. I've worked from London for quite a while, but Shimmr, the company that I run, Shimmr AI, is a global business. So we have a technology team in South Africa, we have another team in the US that does a lot of things, we have another team in the UK. We actually have quite a lot of Indian customers who work with us to sell their books in the UK and the US. Currently we're an English language platform only, but we are going into most global languages quite soon. The book that I wrote, do you remember the Titan submersible that sank in the summer of 2023? It was in the Atlantic, it was going down to the Titanic. I was writing this book at the time, and I kept watching the news, writing the book, watching the news, writing the book. It's just a funny kind of time because ChatGPT was launched at the end of November 2022. So maybe 6 months after ChatGPT launched, I was writing a book about AI and how publishing can embrace it. I think it was the first book about, how AI can be used in publishing. And I'm just beginning to write a second book at the moment about the wider scope of AI, which is partly what I'm going to be talking to you about today. But it's an amazing thing running an AI company because I read every single day. I try to dedicate about an hour and a half to reading newsletters, books, things on the internet, of course, and it's exhausting. It's so hard to try and stay contemporary with AI at the moment. The speed at which it develops is astonishing. So I'll give you my best knowledge as it stands today on the 14th of December. Tomorrow there'll be new information, and if you really want to be part of the AI understanding community, you do need to make an effort. You do need to read a bit. I'm happy to share with you the sorts of sources that I look at. There's some very easy ones. It's just there's such a huge quantity, but actually it's presented in a very digestible form. So I would encourage everybody who's interested in AI to read about it, but also just to experiment. I was listening to the conversation earlier on, and there's a lot of conversation about fear of bias and so on. Well, you probably all have looked at ChatGPT. That's the one that we all know. It's become the generic. Do you use Claude, which comes from Anthropic? They're both American companies. Do you use Gemini? I heard a lot about Gemini, another American company, Google. So those three all come with kind of an American feel in their AI. But I also use Le Chat from Mistral, which is a French AI. I use another one called DeepSeek, which is from China. Another one called Jais from the United Arab Emirates. There are lots and lots and lots of different models of AI. We don't have to stay only understanding what comes from ChatGPT. And the interesting thing is, if you take the same sort of piece of work that you want to get help from AI with, and you put it into the different ones, you get really different answers and you get really different interactions. So what I tend to do when I'm working with AI is maybe I've written a piece of work. I'll put it into the AI and I'll say, please contradict me. Please show me how I'm an idiot. And it's so annoying how good it is at showing you how much of an idiot you are. So almost whatever argument you make, it makes a really good counter argument. And then I put that counter argument in another AI, and it's just fun. You go round and round and you get different perspectives. Your understanding of your subject deepens, and you begin to be able to predict or at least preempt some of the challenges that you're going to get. I'm not saying that I've thought of everything, but boy, does AI help me to be better prepared for things that I need to do. I've spent way too long working, and I've been crafting presentations for maybe 30, 40 years. I used acetates, I used slides, we used boards for a while, we used PowerPoint for ages and ages. The thing I'm about to show you, I created in in Gamma AI, which I only came across maybe a month ago. And with Gamma AI, you can take like 10 lines, 10 sentences that you write, one-line sentences, and it produces 10 reasonable starting slides for you. So you can judge whether my presentation is interesting visually, any good visually or not, but you should just know before you look at it, it's almost entirely produced with AI expressing my thoughts. And I found that really interesting. So of course I went back and edited it and changed some colors and finessed the words here and there, but you're about to hear about AI through a presentation on AI as well. So let's go. The first thing, can you see that okay? First lesson is it's too small for the screen. The first thing I would say is that the speed at which AI is coming to us is beyond most of our comprehension. So, I was there when the internet began, and the first thing was the browsers, the search engines actually, the search engines first. There was Dog this, and there was Yahoo, and there's a load of, Google kind of won. It became the search engine. But that went on for quite a while. And then the browsers came. Do you use Chrome? Do you use Firefox? Do you use Safari? And we learned a whole new ecosystem. And then the social media brands arrived. And we learned a whole new ecosystem. There's Instagram, and there's Facebook, and all the things that we've become accustomed to. And they still arrive. And I know TikTok isn't here, but TikTok's big in the world. And things keep happening, so that currently we're losing X, Twitter, and everybody's going to Blue Sky and so on. So these ecosystems continue to grow, but they kind of grow at a speed which we can understand. I saw some research last week which said that the average human IQ is 100. It's an index. And currently, the IQ of AI is measured at about 120. So it's a really smart person. They think that by the end of next year, it'll be more like 1,000, and the year afterwards, more like 1 million. So the speed at which AI is developing and the scope of its abilities is beyond anything that we've been prepared for before. The growth of Facebook, the growth of the internet, the growth of social media, they are like snails compared to what's happening with AI. The second thing, which I can't read, is that it's accelerating. So one of the kind of misconceptions about AI, and you heard it in the last panel, I'm afraid, but I'm going to call it out, is it gobbles up everything. It's a free-for-all. It doesn't. What happened, I think, happened with the AI companies, the tech companies that made the models. We're an applied AI business. We don't make a model, we use the models. What happened is, I think a few of them went and they got some data, and sure, they stole some of it, they bought some of it. And that's all being argued out in the courts. It's actually going more the way of the AI companies and the publishing houses at the moment, but in the end, that's going to be settled, and people will be paid, and then more data will flow. But what they did is, if you imagine a kitchen, the AI company went into the kitchen and said, I think we could make pancakes if we steal some flour, but we buy the eggs and we have our own milk. And they made pancakes, and everybody said, my God, these pancakes are amazing. So then they proved the case that AI was really worth doing. What they did to do that was not take all the information in the world, but to take little slices. There are data sets that a lot of them use, which are just little slices with biases built in, which they're now working hard to undo. But what we're about to see with the licensing of catalogs by all the publishers is a much, much bigger ingestion of everything. So I anticipate that certainly within 10 years, I'd say much sooner than that, almost everything that has ever been written will have been licensed or read by AIs and ingested. So it will be the entirety of the human expression of emotion, of philosophy, of politics, of economics, of hatred, of love, everything will be in there. At the moment, it's just working on tiny little bits of understanding, and it's already doing the job that it's doing. So I think that's going to be coming very fast. It's accelerating, and therefore, it's going to be everywhere. It's going to be in our social care systems, it's going to be in our education systems, it's going to be in our sewage management systems, it's going to be in our road construction systems. Everything is going to be enhanced. It's certainly going to be interacting with AI in some very significant way. I read a book, in fact I'm still reading it, by a guy called Steven Pinker, and it's called The Better Angels of Our Nature. Interesting book, and the reason I was caught by it was one of the first things you read in the book is it says we are living in a less violent world. And I thought, my God, look at Gaza, look at Ukraine, look at Myanmar, look everywhere, and there's violence. So the author, Steven Pinker, takes the first 100 pages to remind you of how horrible it was 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years, and it was worse. It was even worse then. It was just the amount of mutilation and awfulness that we all did to each other. But the explanation was really interesting. Why does violence happen? And I was thinking, what has been our reaction to AI? It's kind of been a sort of violence. We've gone, nope, you've stolen, you're biased, you're stealing my job, and there's just been a real Of course not with everybody, but there's been quite a lot of that sort of fear and attack on AI. I'm not here to apologize for AI. I'm not, a crazy advocate for AI. There's lots of faults with it, and I'll point out some of those as we go along. But the thing that Steven Pinker says in his book, which was so interesting, was that essentially every species on Earth tries to make its genome the apex genome. So if you're a snail, or an eagle, or a shark, or a human being, you create offensive strategies so that you can beat things that threaten you, and you create defensive strategies to stop things attacking you. And you hope, gradually, to kind of become the best thing in the world. Well, human beings have pretty much won that. Cockroach is doing pretty well too, by the way. It's survived a really long time. But we're doing pretty well. And so I think that our response to AI has been a really primal, I'm a psychologist, by the way, I should have said that at the beginning, and I told you I was an author. I think it's a really primal response to something that threatens our apex position. We thought, oh my God, that can take over everything that I do. What am I meant to do now? And it's made us really think about our place in society, the place of human beings in Earth life, in a more profound way than any of us were expecting when a stupid thing called ChatGPT popped up. And we thought, well, what's that? I'm not going to use that. Google's fine, And then suddenly we found ourselves really, really challenged by it all. So I believe that once we understand that that's what's going on, we can begin to respond much better to it and think, okay, how can I see this as a companion? How can I see this as an ally in my life? A constructive partner rather than a threat to my apex thing. Because the key question to ask is, does AI have a volition to be the apex species on Earth? Now, we all worry about it becoming sentient and doing things it shouldn't do. And it's true. If you set a goal for AI like, make that field the most productive it can be, it'll do that. It'll stop the water going to the rivers, it'll put too much fertilizer in, it doesn't care about the surrounding village being poisoned because you set it a goal, and it's going to achieve the goal the best way for you. So you have to learn to use AI in a knowing way and to limit its goals and to understand the tasks that you're giving it. But does it have inherently a wish to defeat us as the apex species on Earth? I doubt it. We'll have to watch that. We'll have to see whether it becomes self-reflective, whether it has sentience, and all those sorts of things. But at the moment, it's just a really clever predicting, extrapolating machine that learns so much and does so much. So the thing that I feel we need to do with AI is to start feeding it ethically. Almost the best thing that we can do to make AI safe and positive for our futures is to give it sell it if we need to, if we have to, if we should. Everything that's good. Compassion, honesty, integrity, kindness, charity. I mean, whatever you want to describe as good in life, let's teach it that these are good things. At the moment, we're kind of fighting it and saying, you can't have this, you can't have that. Well, let's see it a different way. Let's say, actually, there's a deal to be done about all of the things that are written in the world. And it's not just about writing, it's about music, it's about film, it's about every expression of humanity that there is. And let it understand all of us, because all AI is a full reflection of us. And so let's try to be our best and create this companion in life that is the best that it can be. Complicated thought, big thought, but I think it's a really important one. I mentioned I was a psychologist, and I won't pretend to be a neuroscientist, but I know a little bit about it. And maybe you know a little bit about it too. There are two things that are kind of important to understand about human beings. At least two things. One is that we feel really fast. So all of you sitting here in the audience will have already decided, do you believe this guy Nadim? Is he just talking shit? Or actually, is there something here that is kind of vibing with me and I get it? We can't help doing that. We just go positive or negative. We do it instantly. It's our gut reflex. We've taken a really long time to teach ourselves, don't do that. Think about it. Be rational. Be objective. Evaluate whether there's value in what's being said to you, and so on. And that's our thinking. So we feel fast, we think slow. What does AI do? It thinks unbelievably fast. We've never met anybody that thinks as fast as, it's ridiculous. You put something into AI, like, I haven't even finished scrolling down and you've already done the whole, what are you doing? How do you do this? And this is only with an IQ of 120. Wait till next year, wait till the year after. So I think what's going to happen with humanity as we go along, and this is quite a challenge for us, is that we're going to find that we abdicate our responsibilities. We actually delegate our responsibility for quite a lot of rational stuff. Traffic management, sewage management, evaluation of hospital availability against vaccines. I mean, everything where there's kind of data and thinking and rational and objectivity needs, AI will do that really well, and we'll begin to feel comfortable with how it does it. So what does that leave us to do? To do the thing that only humans really do. And only humans can articulate how they do it, which is to feel. I can tell you my feelings right now standing here. You can do the same sitting there. There's nothing else on earth that can do that. They might have feelings, but they can't articulate them. So I think the future for us is to be much more expressive of our feelings and to trust our guts, to trust our instincts, to go back to saying, the moment I shook his hand, I knew I didn't trust him. Or, I fell in love with that girl the moment I saw her, and I'm going to go with that. So I think we're going to get much more because we're basically wired that way, and it's not changing. So we're going to have a multifaceted impact of AI on society. We're going to think again about what our purpose in life is. We're going to have a philosophical challenge. What are we here to do? What is the purpose of life? How do we feel fulfillment? And we're going to have professional questions, because AI can help to do a lot of what we do today. Sure, we kind of dress that up at the moment and say, yeah, it'll do the boring stuff and that leads me to be more creative. Well, being more creative isn't the only thing. You can also just sit there and eat biscuits. You can do lots of different things with spare time in your life, but definitely AI is going to change the fundamental economics of the way that we live our lives, societally, philosophically, politically, religiously, and certainly professionally. It's a funny thing. I'm going to be really miserable for a moment. I have a happy life, and I've lived a happy life, so don't feel sad for me. But we all basically spend a sort of period, maybe 20 years in education, preparing to work. Then we do about 40 years of working really hard, and then we spend about 20 more years slowly dying. It's terrible. Imagine if AI could take that middle 40 years of work and say, you don't have to just do that. Even when you're working and being economically positive for the environment in which you live in, you contribute positively to your society. In half of that time that you normally would have dedicated 100% to work, do something else. Sure, I don't even know what to suggest you. Ride a motorbike, paint, make love, see if you can stand upside down for 10 minutes a day. Whatever it is that you want to do. You have time. AI is going to give us time. And societally and politically and economically, it's a really big moment for us because we could insist, give us half of our time back. I'm not trying to stir any particular movement here, but it's really interesting that actually the fundamental structure of the way that we live our lives, education, work, retirement, could be changed by AI if we choose to. Now, it's probably going to be the case that we just keep working 40 hours a week and we contribute twice as much work, and corporations, benefit from that, and so do countries. But we could challenge it, and that's an interesting point. Imagine where you don't go to a bar and you meet somebody, or you go to somebody's house and they say, so what do you do? That's what we do, isn't it? What do you do? Oh, I'm a writer, I'm an engineer, I'm a doctor, I'm a road sweeper, I'm a baker, I'm a cook. Maybe you don't say that. Maybe you say, I love turtles. It's potentially a really different world for us. In education, I think there's really big challenges too, and all of these things, by the way, affect creativity. If you need me to spell it out, I'm building up to showing you how all of these things really change the way we might think about creativity. At the moment, if you go and meet somebody, did you hear earlier on, oh God, I can't remember who said it. Ask for information because you can only be wise when you have information. Somebody said that on stage earlier on. Really interesting. Very little debate about it, but I don't think it's true anymore. Because historically, when you met a wise man, let's keep it as a wise man for the moment, because that's traditionally what it was a person who seemed to know everything. Like, you know about astronomy, and you know about medicine, and you know about agriculture, and you know about music, and everything you asked this wise man, he had a way of explaining it to you, and you thought, wow, God, he must have studied and learned so much, and I'd love to do that. That was the idea of retention. That was the idea of filling your hard disk with everything that you could find, and then having enough RAM, random access memory, to explain it when you needed to and access it. AI is changing that. AI is saying, why would you hard disk anything, really? You can stream it. And I think education is about to go from hard disking to streaming. So Gen Z annoys a lot of employers and a lot of people because they don't seem to do anything, and they're always looking for attention, and they're going to be fantastic users of AI. And Gen A, even better, because they just think, well, why should I bother? If you want me to tell you which is the best film to watch, it's this one. And they've looked at 5 sites, and they've done some critical thinking. And they've used their information flow in a really intelligent fashion. That productivity is unbelievable compared to spending years and years trying to fill your head with stuff. Of course, we still need to know that boiling water will burn your skin, and don't go near a snake because it might bite you, and we need to retain some stuff. But I think fundamentally, the movement in education is going to be towards teaching critical thinking, that there's an avalanche, an unstoppable flow of information that you can get instantly and very cheaply. I know that there's some economics that are challenging, but actually, for what you get out of AI, it's unbelievably accessible. So that's a really, really big change coming our way. And then here I wrote an article in a British literary publication that normally has about 2,000 reads every time it's published. It got 2.5 million. And I got 10 death threats for writing what I'm about to say to you. I think that there are 8 billion creatives on Earth. In my view, there is nobody on Earth that doesn't have a creative impulse. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter what their perspective is. If you're a beggar on a street, you might have a creative view about the way the wheels go round in the morning compared to the way they go around in the evening with the sunlight. Why wouldn't you have that? Do you express that to anybody? Do you write that? Can you produce a poem, write a musical opera, make a painting? No, you can't. You're a beggar on the street with a creative perspective. I'm taking an extreme example just to make the point. And we have traditionally celebrated people who can write things in a way that's quite interesting, people who can make music, and people who can paint. There are also engineers who create bridges, and people who invent aircraft, and doctors who think unbelievably creative about new biology and stuff. So creativity is expressed in many, many, many different ways. And I think what's possibly coming our way is the separation of craft, principally writing, drawing, singing, making music, from the act of creativity. So AI, and please hear this really clearly, I do not advocate writing books with AI. In fact, I think it's a terrible idea. I also think it's the most boring way to talk about AI, and people get so hot and bothered saying, oh, we're going to have all these books written by AI. You know they're going to be boring, they're going to be useless. There's lots of them already, they're soulless, they're unimaginative. That's not what AI creativity is. It's the last thing it should be. But can it be a way of actually envisaging whole new ways of expressing yourself? Let's say you're an ADHD Gen Z who really couldn't be bothered to do very much at all except imagine stuff. And they think, if I had a multimedia game with a dog, they could find a way using AI to code something or create something or work with somebody to say, I've had this amazing insight that we could do X, Y, and Z, which then produces 10X. And AI allows that in a way that's been impossible to achieve before. So I'm kind of inviting the world to have the humility to allow new creatives who have previously been silent, mute, unable to express themselves, to employ AI to express themselves, to articulate their thoughts to us, not to write books. I think what's also going on, if you observe AI being used in publishing now, is that it's being applied to corporate efficiency. How do we make our legal contracts more consistent? How do we do our rights management with a bit less accounting and do it faster? How do we qualify manuscripts in a more objective way? How do we get the editors to get through more things than they do at the moment? It's all about corporate efficiency. It's very internal, it's quite closed, it's quite processy. But I think what's going to happen is that it's going to move to authorial emancipation. Already, if you want to do, like I haven't been to Pune before, but if I wanted to write a book about a murder mystery in Pune, we know a very good writer who does that sort of thing here, I could research Pune in a way that previously without AI I really couldn't do in a proper or serious way. And I could develop my thoughts, so it'd give me some sort of answer about, well, here's the architecture of Pune, and here's historical society, and here are some of the fault lines and the tensions and so on, so I could see if I could write my murder mystery. And then I start throwing in things. Well, what about, I want to use transport into this. Well, there's a hotel with a metro and a train station next to it, and and you could think about that. Well, when was that constructed? And you just go on and on and on, imagining and interacting and building in your mind the sort of thing that you might want to express. There's that's one way. It's just kind of a plotter, a researcher, a companion, and then you stop and you say, is this sounding like a lot of other stuff? I'm afraid it is. There's been 1,000 books. Is this telling me off? Have I done something wrong? Have there been 1,000 books that sound like where I'm going at the moment? Yes. This kind of story is told a lot, Guy. Why don't you save your energy and do something else? But it could also be something completely different, where you say, and I did it when I was writing my book, actually. I was writing about the history of publishing and the history of AI, and I didn't know how to make them come together. I felt like there were two separate sections of the book. And I said to the AI, can you help me? I want to understand the symmetry, the similarity between a Sumerian clay tablet, which is one of the first forms of recorded writing, with a neural network in AI? I mean, I have no friends that I can ask that question. Probably nobody in the audience can answer that question. But AI never fails to give you a point of view. And if you keep asking questions, it'll keep trying to give you answers to it. And so I was able to kind of begin to understand how my chapters were intertwining with each other, which allowed me to express it, I think, in a more engaging style than I was doing beforehand. So conceptual collision, kind of plot and thought and narrative development, lots of different ways within AI that you can be helped. But ultimately, I think what's going to happen is that we're going to find new creative media. You know, it seems weird, doesn't it? We probably think we know everything about how we can express ourselves. There's art, there's music, there's writing, there's all the other things I talked about as well. But there may be a whole new form of artistic expression coming our way because people's imaginations are going to be enabled and liberated, emancipated, as I put it, in a way that we haven't previously seen. I'd be so disappointed if we don't see completely new art forms in a year or two, probably coming from Gen Z. That's what I'm anticipating. So the efficiencies are, you know, as you can see there, you know, manuscript qualification. I won't go through all of these sorts of things, but you know, it's editing and proofing. It's understanding kind of distribution efficiencies, all those sorts of things within publishing. AI can do immediately, and it's fantastic. The emancipations, I think, are the new writing that'll come, the new true forms of expression that we've been discussing a little bit that haven't really been seen before, and new interactions. New interactions I'll talk about a bit more because they've been promised for a long time in publishing and never really have happened, but I think they're about to happen in a way that we haven't seen before. So interactive and immersive books, and you know, deliberately, I worked with the AI to produce this image of a boy with what looks like a kind of mixture of a book and an electronic thing. You know, imagine there's a book about a little boy and his dog that go on adventures, and it becomes a series of 16 books, catching butterflies one day, having fun swimming in a stream the next day, accidentally getting into a fight with another boy another day. You know, lots of things that kind of kids happen in their lives. And kids are reading these books and enjoying the stories. And then they can click and say, the butterfly, can we change that into parrots? And the book can interactively say, yes, but actually the trees need to change, and the time of day that we interact needs to change. And so suddenly, the reader is interacting with the AI around what the author gave them as the fundamental corpus, you know, the fundamental piece of expression about the little boy and his dog and all the adventures that they had together. And then, even more interactively, the boy who's reading the book says, this parrot story is actually pretty cool. I told my friend about it, and his friend joins it. And now there's a parrot subgroup of the little boy and the dog story, and it becomes a community, and they start talking about different parrot stories, and then they start writing stories, and they interact with the author, and it's an incredibly rich environment. I think without AI, this is impossible to do, but with AI, it's not that hard to do. I think the other thing that, you know, we'll see happening is that within our data at Shimmr, we're beginning to see this already, within most publishers' catalogs, there's quite a lot of undiscovered work. It lies hidden, it lies, you know, not working very hard. But we could see that AI says, in 2025, in Q2, these themes are going to be big on the global stage, partly because that's happening over here, that's happening over there. So any content, any writing, any literature that is focused on that area will be hot. So reactivate that within your catalogs, and it's surfaced. So future trend spotting, I think, is really interesting. Tailored content, where you say, you know, in the community around Pune, around December, there's going to be a hotbed of publishing, thinking, and literature interest. So bring together some stuff and surface it around there in the different media channels. You know, that can happen as well, which is interesting, so it helps us all. And then I think cultural prediction, which says, you know, it's a bit like what I'm saying, I suppose, that We'll have Gen Zers saying, I don't want to work for 40 years. I'm not going to give you my job. I'm not a corporate slave and never will be. And so you start writing for them. I think all of these things are going to be part of the emancipation. This author avatar thing is really interesting. So on Shimmr's website, there's quite a lot of things that I write, like the articles or the columns that I write. And there's quite a lot of stuff on YouTube with me, and there'll probably be something from here. So AI can read all of this stuff, and it begins to understand my themes, my turns of phrase, the way I talk. And it's not that hard to get it to imitate me. And there's a company called Personify. It's an AI company, which you can put onto your website, where it reads everything on your website, reads your tone of voice, reads all your content, and it becomes a specialized avatar. It could be for Shimmr, it could be for Nadim, it could be for whatever you want it to be. And so somebody interested in talking to my company about our services doesn't have to have a sales demo, doesn't have to find me somewhere. They can actually go to the Personify avatar and ask, and actually get really good interactions that make them in their own time, in their own way, and we're asking all the hardest questions which they might have thought would be rude otherwise. They can do that through these avatars. Now, that's fine in a corporate setting. I think it'll also be interesting for authors who'll be able to understand their reader base much better, because they'll see the sorts of things that their readers want to interact about. They want to talk about these 3 books, not those 7 books. Oh, but I was going to write another of the 7. Don't. Write another of the 3. And it helps you to really understand what's going on. So it gives much more access to the readers. It gives more life to your literature. It gives you further insights into what people are finding exciting about you. But I think, personalized publishing models as well, where, people find completely independent ways to do things. I think one of the things that I'm seeing is that publishing has really been very much a kind of B2B business, where the publishers take the stories, then they sell them to the retailers or the distributors, and they wholesale their business out. But more and more, I think there's going to be people finding their own way to do much of the value chain of publishing, using AI to help them to edit and to proofread and to prepare manuscripts for print on demand and all those sorts of things. So it'll take some while, but there'll be much more direct literature to consumer models going on than there are at the moment. So just a quick thing about AI with Shimmr, because I think this is an application, it's kind of a creative application of AI in publishing. What we do is we saw that in English they say about 100 million books have been published, and 95 million have never been advertised. So they sit there with a discoverability challenge, a problem actually. Publishers have invested in these great books, authors have written these great works, readers want them, but nobody can find each other. We're all blind, we don't know where it is or how to navigate. So what we did was we automated advertising. We said, well, with AI, if we could read the book and discover the best strategy to sell it, use that strategy to create advertising that really faithfully brings to life that book, and then use our understanding of the book and the advertising to find the right audiences. It's what Porter Anderson, one of the journalists in the trade, called reverse discoverability, where every book finds its audience. It's not about the reader finding books. So we treat every book as our client, and we say, we understand you psychologically, we do a psychological basis to it, and we will produce advertising that brings out the most exciting things about your titles in a more animated way, in a more exciting, dynamic way. So the advertising, it's quite hard for you to see on the screen there because of the size, but everything there is produced entirely by AI. So the AI read the book, did the analysis of the book, wrote the brief for what the advertising should look like, produced the advertising, and then placed it into media. And really what we're doing is what some people have called cracking the code of discoverability. I mean, our advertising draws about 6 times more than average interest in the creative vehicle, and about 15 times more, it's increasing every month, interest in interacting to buy the book. So those books that were going nowhere in the backlist are suddenly finding life. People are seeing them, interacting with them, and the revenues of the publishers are going up. Just a quick note about the images and stuff that we create. It isn't you take an image of a Mona Lisa or something and you bastardize it and you mess it up and you represent it. What's happened with AI actually is if it's learned that depression looks like this, joy looks like that, anxiety looks like this. So when we prompt it and we say, show an anxious little boy at a river about to have a fight with a stranger who's come in to steal his parrot, it brings all of those bits of understanding, and it then creates pixel by pixel an entirely new creation. It is not a representation of it. It didn't go and search in some sort of asset library and say, oh, here's a picture of a boy about to have a fight with a parrot in the street. None of that exists. It just says, okay, I understand all the ingredients you need here, and I'll give you a selection to see what you think. And then you can refine how that happens. That's the work that we do. So here's probably the most provocative thing that I want to say to you. I think it's possible to argue that as humans, we're the creators of AI, we should really consider it the most creative thing that humanity has done yet. Because what it's done is it's increasingly gathering the entirety of all of our history, all of our emotions, all of our intellects, all of our curiosities, all of our appetites, all of our dark parts as well, and saying, it's all here, accessible for you. So I can today decide to read a book in Mongolian. I can go and say, instantly translate, some femme fatale novel, because I've read all the ones in English, and the Scandinavian ones I've exhausted. Are there any in Mongolia? Yes. Translate, please. It's allowing us to access cultures, to break down bias, to be more unified culturally, not homogenizing us, but actually making us way more interested in each other and finding it easier to access each other. So that is my last thought to you, that I would treat AI as the most creative thing we might ever see in our lifetimes. Thank you very much for listening. Sure. I hope there are no death threats coming my way because I'm getting tired of those. But if anybody has any questions.
Maybe you didn't intend it, but it was provocative, and I appreciate that. But just one thought that you put out, I'd like you to say a little bit more, because it interests me very much. At some point you said something about how AI is going to make us, or require us to be more expressive about our feelings. And that's something I feel we don't do enough. But why do you think that that's important, and why do you think that applies to AI? Just expand on that a bit.
Well, I think it's just it's really mesmerizing, and it's astonishing how well AI can think. Now, it can be an idiot completely sometimes still. That's going to change really fast, and it's going to become more and more reliable in the conclusions it reaches. So a lot of the things that we might do, like you sit there and you think, well, I better design the traffic management system for Pune. How often should we get the lights to go red? Like, just ask the AI. It can study all the data and say, actually, counterintuitively, we should do this. So then you've got some of your time back. And you'll find that more and more of the rational thinking things are better delegated to AI. And the thing that AI can't do is figure out feelings. I mean, with vision and so on, I mean, there's some AI already looking at cameras in trucks, and they read the truck driver's face, and they see that he's anxious or angry, or, and they play music to make him calmer, and, there's quite a lot of interaction already happening with AI and emotions. But originating feelings still happens only within us. And I think so much of what we express creatively comes from feelings, not so much from thoughts. We gradually express it rationally. We articulate it in a written form or a spoken form very often. But actually the feeling of the fundamental nature of your interaction and how you want something to happen in your life tends to come in an inarticulate, felt way. And so I think we're going to allow ourselves to navigate the world much more instinctively. When you walk down a road, you generally don't knock into somebody unless you think about it. And then you do this, oh, sorry, and then you walk around. We're so much better when we feel than when we think.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, sure. You see, some of the greatest campaign in advertising
Can't hear you. Just come closer, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Just bring it right to your mouth.
Now?
Yes.
Yeah. Some of the greatest campaigns of advertising in the world are developed on the basis of consumer insights.
Yeah.
Not only advertising campaign, but even the poems, the movies, and the books that appeal the people, they are developed on the basis of consumer insights.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to the AI's role, whether it's in advertising or doing anything, how does AI bridge the gap of the consumer human insight
Yeah.
in order to develop the final product?
Yeah. Well, I spent 20 years running global AI, global insight, consumer insight companies. So I've come from that world and understand that's the way I used to help create advertising. Actually, with Shimmr, we've gone a completely different way. And we've said the thing that always sells the best is a psychological connection. It's a deep emotional feelings connection. So when we get our AI to read the publisher's script, the book when they send it to us, it does two things. It reads it structurally. This is a book about mackerel fishing in Sweden. And psychologically, it's a book about depression and cruelty. And so the advertising we produce shows fishing in Sweden, but also gives you the sense of depression and cruelty. Weird book, sorry, bad example. But that's what it does. And so when you put that out, people feel the connection with it. That's the consumer insight that's enabled by AI that we could never get before through focus groups or quantitative surveys or anything else. We couldn't read the emotions in the way that AI does that. So we have a huge framework. It's like 990 million parameters or something, where we analyze emotions and psychological values in each book that we read. And then we use that, we call it book DNA, to brief the advertising. So the advertising is completely unique to the book and expresses its fundamental psychological nature. That connects. That's why we're getting 15 times the normal amount of sales. So people just get the book.
Yes, that is my question is, should we not address to end all wars, and we must end all wars forever in human history?
Yeah, I'm certainly not convinced we're living in a less violent world, and I know the many different forms of violence that exist. What I'm saying is that book said, the book, Better Nature, Better Angels of Our Nature, says we're living in a more violent world so that it can then reveal that we fight each other because we're trying fundamentally in a primal way to be the apex. And I think what's possible with AI is that AI is not trying to fight with us to be the apex. So we don't have to fight AI. We should just learn to use it really well. We don't have to fight it.